live recap show. It's Monday, March 30th today, right? March 30th? Yes, it is. You're
All
losing track of the
Thanksgiving.
days when you're working from
That is
home.
correct.
March 30th, and welcome to the recap show. I have co-host Kim Lantis, who's in Hermosillo, Mexico, and Carlos Ponces, who is in Mexico City. And we're going to recap two shows we had last week. It was a double whammy, as Carlo likes to call it. One show on Wednesday, we talked to someone about strength finding in interview process. I think some of the key things that came out of that was the importance of customizing the interview specific with the candidate in mind, letting the candidate participate in the shaping of the interview so that you can get the maximum results out of it, rather than having a set fixed way of doing it, creating something that's a little bit more collaborative, and then finding ways to let that individual say, these are my strengths and here's how they apply to what you're hiring for, and then testing against those strengths that they've identified themselves. I thought that was an interesting conversation. And then the next day we spoke with Alex Iceman about using artificial intelligence and software to find solutions to cures like cancer or even the latest pandemic that we're all faced with. So welcome, guys. What stood out for you guys based on these two shows? Let's get right into it.
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, well, I got my own take, but Kim, I believe that you have come up with some great highlights. So why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay. Thanks, Carlos.
Absolutely.
Very good. Yes, I think if we want to talk about the first interview with Sean Massa, he is the CTO at a company called Flash Recruit, and this was specifically talking about the strength finding interviews. I found this interesting because I think it goes back to a talk we had several weeks ago, I think, with this idea of incorporating, this personal side to the recruiting process, and how it's nice to make that process, flow and be human all through the hiring. And I thought this was a nice way to sort of focus on that, this idea of allowing for the people that you are interviewing to basically present their own strengths, or within, a specific guideline. I think there are some, of course, limitations and ways in which you're to kind of maneuver this. But the idea of allowing somebody to kind of present what they want to present about themselves as a way that might be beneficial to your company or to the role. And I thought it was unique. I was left with some doubts as to how to actually go about doing that, or what that might look like, scaling for like a larger company when maybe that's not always possible. But there was definitely some really great food for thought there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Carlos.
No,
I was going to say,
yeah,
I think
Tom
actually shared a blog with us, right? That we were going to include that link to more information.
Yeah, look, I think that show is good. Implementing that is a challenge. Obviously, you have to identify the strengths that are relevant to what you're interviewing for, right? So if you're interviewing for a night guard job and your strength is sleeping in for 9 hours, that may not be the right strength to be interviewing for a night guard job. But the one that stood out for me the most was actually the next day, the Thursday interview, which was with Alex Iceman. And it was very interesting because clearly there's opportunity to use computing and artificial intelligence to get smarter about researching possible cures. I mean, there's a few things you could do with AI. You could do a lot of permutations, so you can look at thousands of different A/B tests, if you will, which would be humanly impossible to do in a short period of time, in a short time frame. But also the thing that stood out was the importance of sharing and collaborating the data, which is, especially with what's going on right now with COVID-19, that's the critical path to success globally. It's to share the findings, to share the insights that the healthcare professionals are discovering, and to do it openly and put those into models and use supercomputers where appropriate. Especially the government has made a lot of them available right now to start finding solutions. That's the thing that stood out for me the most. And and the challenges that they've been facing in sharing that data, which are kind of coming down right now, unfortunately, because of some terrible virus that's a threat to everyone. But the good news, the silver lining, is it might open up more collaboration, which would lead to finding cures to more things. What did you guys think about that conversation?
Well, here's what I can say. Well, before we continue on to the with the AI related conversation, really quick, what I wanted to mention about the first interview on Wednesday is that, well, there's definitely going to be. I'm personally looking forward to see what happens with the recruiting world, because that particular conversation was about strength finding, right? Strength finding interviews, and right now it's a little tricky because a lot of companies are not hiring actively or as actively as before. That means that there's going to be a lot of folks out there who might be looking for a job or looking for opportunities, and then we try to put out the best of them, for the world to see. So it's going to be tricky, on both ends, the hiring part and also the offer part. So I look forward to see what happens, especially in this context of finding strengths in candidates that are trying to sell themselves well in the job world. So, but regarding the next interview that we had on Thursday, and I'm with you on that, Tulio, I also think it was a very, very relevant, to say the least. Well, one of the things that I can definitely stood out for me was how how that technologies like AI and even machine learning and such, how they're going to be applied in not only in cancer, but also, as you mentioned, in the pandemic that we're actually facing nowadays. So, is it something that you feel can be applied immediately? And if so, how is it going to happen? And who's going to take on that undertaking of actually using such technology to find a cure, um, alleviation to all these diseases? So
Right.
I'm also going to
Well,
be on the lookout for how it all evolves.
right. Well, I think what Alex was saying is actually is being applied. My understanding from what I listened to is that the current application is more being used in diagnostics, right? Where the software allows physicians, doctors to input the data that they have with the person's, the parameters with their analysis, is even when it comes to potential cures, a wish list, like this is not a treatment that I want to have, or this is a treatment that I'm willing to undertake. And then coming up with diagnostics of what is this potential disease that this person has, and also as generating potential cures or treatments, right? Of course, I think that's dependent on already known information. But I think what's interesting about that is it allows, and I think he even talked about this mostly being used in China right now, with the infrastructure of a place like China where there's so many people and limitations on physicians. It's a really great tool, because when your job is working with people, it doesn't necessarily allow for those doctors to have the time with their continuing education, right? To investigate, to see what the newest trends are and things like that. And so to have a computer program that basically keeps up with the newest trends and the newest treatments and things, it allows physicians to focus on their job, right, of being a physician and actually tending to a person, rather than having to spend so much time, I guess, in preparation, which I thought was really interesting. And then the predicative elements that you mentioned, right, Tulio, this idea of using supercomputers to make predictions and analyze different parameters and different situations that no human could possibly do, right, or at least in a time frame that would be of any use. And I think that's what's more timely right now with the COVID-19, is more of what's going to happen, what could happen, and I'm so sorry.
It's okay. We'll chime in. We're all
No worries.
managing the work from home life. We're all
Did you hear
managing
that,
through
Mom? Zoe
that.
peed.
Oh, great. All right, we'll let you attend to that. I think it's going to come. Look, we're up on time, but I think it's going to come down to a few things. I think what's happening right now could be a great lesson on the importance of collaborating. I think when it's all, and we will have discovered some treatments very quickly and some approaches to this thing to get it under control fairly quickly because of that collaboration. Unfortunately, it happened as a result of significant fear and loss of life, and potential loss of life. And I think it'll be a lesson to identify how many other things could we find cures for or treatments for that we're not today because we're not collaborating, we're not having those conversations, we're not openly pursuing them globally. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how AI could be applied to something that's really valuable and something for good, but not as a result of some emergency pandemic, but maybe being more proactive and less focus on who owns what and more focus on just doing the right thing by people. That's my recap. Carlos.
And finally, Tulio, I'd like to add that we're talking about data, so I'm sure there's a lot of data being generated now with the current situation. So I look forward to what comes out of all this data being used or put into or feed it into AI tools and see what comes out. I would be intrigued, to say the least.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's hope for the best, and let's hope we learn how to be better collaborative creatures out of this whole thing and find more solutions instead of less solutions.
Absolutely.
Wednesday. Well, we have two more this week, right? We have two other shows. We got one tomorrow again, and then we have Wednesday. Super excited for both, but I'm personally excited for Wednesday because a personal friend and one of the best coaches in the world, David Meltzer, who's going to join us, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. He's always very uplifting. So if you've been struggling the past few weeks, just kind of getting your head right and keeping a positive outlook, you don't want to miss this Dojo Live on Wednesday. I'm confident it's going to be very encouraging. I'm personally looking forward to it. I've been struggling for the past few weeks myself in terms of having the right mental outlook. So I'm looking forward to it personally to get some uplifting words as well. And then I think that's it, right, Carlos?
That's it. Well, we're on Tuesday. We're going to be having a conversation with Donato Diorio from the CEO, the principal and founder of Data Z. I don't have the topic yet. Donato hasn't sent it to me, but it should be up there on the website as soon as I get it. Should be interesting because this person, he's been a personal acquaintance of mine for more than a decade, and he refers to himself as a process deconstructor. So just based out on that description alone, I look forward to what he's going to come up with topic-wise, and we'll see. It should be an interesting conversation, Julio. That's on Tuesday, though. So remember, Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, Donato Diorio from Data Z, and Wednesday, Dave Meltzer from Sports One Marketing about Road to Happiness and Revenue. So those are the two conversations that we have scheduled for next week.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tulio. Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.